Smash Ultimate has the most items in the entire series, and given their nature, they're usually overlooked by a majority of players who are taking the game even somewhat seriously, which, yeah, that makes sense. But that doesn't mean they're not still interesting. That's the point of this series, where I go over every single item in the game and talk about them, ranging from trivia, tips, or anything else that I found interesting to fit within its own section. Today's video starts with the timer and ends with the golden hammer. Well, okay, I'm gonna end it with the home run bat and just put the hammer and the golden hammer next to each other. I still don't really know why they're even separated in this menu, but it doesn't matter. Let's just get into it. The timer item normally slows down opponents to 1/4 of their normal speed, which is easy to visualize by overlaying it with the same speed in training mode. On top of this, it has a chance for one of two backfires. Either it'll slow down the person who grabbed the timer, or it'll slow down everything. Now, in terms of odds, I'll be real and say that despite looking in a lot of places, I couldn't find concrete numbers anywhere, not even on Meshima's spreadsheet of the params for the game. So the best that I can do as someone who doesn't know how to look into game code and is rather just a guy, is grab a whole bunch of timers and see how many backfires I got. You know, the brute force kind of science, I like that. So I decided to grab the timer 1,000 times, and in doing that I got a total of 71 backfires, which is around 7% of the time. The self slowdown was 29 of them, so 2.9%, and the everything slowdown was 42, being 4.2%. These obviously shouldn't be taken as super concrete numbers for their actual stats, and the test did assume a lot of things about the mechanics of the backfire, but at the very least this gives us a ballpark idea of the chances, which apparently just didn't exist beforehand, so I'll take it. Now, regarding the mechanics, the way the timer interacts with projectiles is fairly interesting in that, while your startup and end lag are slowed down, the projectile itself will move at its normal speed. This is not the case for things that are considered projectiles but you ride, so no cheesing the slowdown here, though the moment you stop riding them, they become fast again, which is a little bit funny. And even projectiles that you control are at their normal speed, which can be a decent alternative, but not all. A huge example of something weird is with Nestor Lucas's neutral specials. For some reason, when you're slowed down, the duration of PK freeze or PK flash is extended by a ludicrous margin. Even if I let go of the B button instantly after using it, they don't go off until they're already essentially fully charged, which makes them really hard to control. But if I do just keep holding it, they keep going on. It's easiest to visualize on a huge map. Going from the top of Palutena's temple, the projectile is able to go all the way down to the bottom when slowed down like this. Though its damage doesn't keep scaling on and on, it stays as usual max number. The only other character I could think of with a weird projectile is Robin's Thoron. On a normal stage, the most you'll see is an increase of like 3% or so, but it's more obvious again on bigger stages. Thoron's limit usually goes to around here, but when it's slowed down, it goes all the way across the entire screen. And yeah, Crom is not exactly having a good time here. So when Robin's slowed down, the Thoron just stays out for longer, which lets its hitbox keep piling up. There's a bit of a bell curve to the damage output where if you're too far away it doesn't deal as much damage, but if you're right in the center it is crazy strong. So it might be possible to come up in other stages that aren't quite as massive, but probably not, honestly. Also, just a quick mention of the backfire that slows down everything. When I say that word, I do mean everything. This is very clearly different from just applying the slowdown effect to each character. It actually slows down the entire game. And a great way to prove that is by using projectiles. Now, even they are slowed down, with PK freeze acting like it normally should, just, you know, slower, which is a bit more intuitive. While the lightning bolt usually shrinks opponents, the same size as a poison mushroom, half the normal size, it has a chance for one of two backfires, much like the timer. Either it'll shrink the one who picked it up instead, or it'll supersize the opponents. Also much like the timer, the exact rates at which these backfires happen are just not written down anywhere. So I did a similar test, though this time I ended up going through 1,500 lightning bolts instead of just 1,000. I'll talk about why in a bit. First, for the results, out of 1,500 lightning bolts, I got a total of 156 backfires, which I'm comfortable just saying is 10%. Of the two backfire types, the usual backfire happens 72 times, or 4.8%, with the mega backfire happening 84, or 5.6%. There's some slight variation, but I'm again comfortable just saying it's technically a 5% chance for each. So, you know, 10% chance to backfire, then it's a coin toss which backfire it is. It makes sense to me, and the numbers are kinda close to the timer, but with a sample size this big, and also based on overall vibes, I definitely felt like the lightning bolt backfire was a bit more common than the timer, even if just slightly. Again though, obviously a huge grain of salt, these are very rough tests. It's not like I'm trying to make a peer-reviewed journal or anything. I'm just trying to entertain you while you're eating your dinner, or lunch or whatever, I don't know. Now, after my initial 500 tests, I wondered if it was impossible to get a backfire effect if that backfire was already present, and given that I was doing these 5 lightning bolts at a time, that would skew my results quite a bit, so I scrapped those to handle it more carefully afterwards. But then after the new 1000, I realized that you actually can get the same backfire effect multiple times, so I just brought those first 500 tests back. More numbers couldn't hurt, right? Speaking of numbers hurting, something Meshima's Param spreadsheet goes over is the amount their size changes. The lightning backfire grows you by a factor of 2.4 times, while the super mushroom is only 1.7 times. A pretty obvious difference. But what's really funny is that, for some reason, this growth factor is even higher when you're in Giant Special Smash, increasing your size by 3 times now, which is just a little bit big. So I guess they intentionally wanted this specific interaction to be totally ridiculous. Though the normal shrinkage rate while in Tiny Special Smash stays the same as usual, at half your size. It's still really tiny though. The bullet bill is the item that lets you turn into the projectile. But just like any other projectile, that also means that you can be reflected. And for some reason, by being reflected, you get a massive amount of percent dealt to yourself. No knockback or anything at least, but maybe don't use this item directly into the hero that currently has bounce active. Though for an extra safe and more effective way to use the bullet bill, I recommend the kamikaze tech. Whenever you hit a surface with the item, you explode, dealing lots of extra damage. So all you really need to do is just aim it at the ground. If you're positioned right, you'll get both the shooting hit and the explosion hit. The projectile hit ignores shield, which makes this especially effective, but even if you only land the explosion, that does massive shield damage, and guess what? You can act out of the bullet bill basically immediately, allowing for insane pressure. And also remember that you can Z-drop even the bullet bill. So if you ever wanted to get fancy, you can use that tech to combo aerials into the item or any other crazy stuff you can imagine. Even if a lot of people don't play with items, there's a lot of room for spicy sauce with them, which I hope I've given you a small idea of at least. The beam sword is a totally subtle reference to similar glowing sci-fi weaponry, and that's frankly the only real thing of note about it in this game. Its description says the blade gets longer the stronger the attack is, but this isn't a correlation to actual power, it's just saying the tilts and smash attacks have a larger blade size than normal swings. So no, boosting your offensive power with spirits won't change its size. Though yes, spirits will affect the power output of the sword both as a battering item and as a thrown item. In past games, some characters had unique forward smash mechanics with the weapon, like hitting twice or whatever, but nowadays everyone's just sort of been homogenized. I mean, at least Marth looks pretty cool when he's charging it up. To compensate for the lack of substance, I use this as an opportunity to talk about general item stuff, like how Mewtwo holds the item telekinetically, which looks really sick. There's actually even a hidden feature with this down taunt too, where whatever item it's holding gets orbited around. Outside of just being a cool detail, if you're holding something that can explode automatically, you could technically use this taunt to hit someone farther behind you than would otherwise be possible from just a normal idle animation. I don't know why you'd want to do that, but you can. This isn't the last time an item is just kinda dull with not much to talk about, so you can expect more generic, all-encompassing item facts for those items too. The lipstick shoots out some magical particles that apply the flower effect. The particles increase its range a bit and its damage output kinda, but if you use the item too much, the particles go away and the sound effect goes down a few pitches. Though it'll still apply the flower effect when hitting someone, and frankly its range is still fine. Now, while the flower effect isn't unique to the lipstick, it's its main feature, so we'll still talk about it. For one, the flower's size will stack the more hits you pile on, with something around this size being the largest I could get. It's taller than Mario at this point, which is super obstructive. But it's not just funny looking, as the bigger the flower, the longer it sticks around for. If I don't make any inputs here, it stays around for over 48 seconds, dealing a buttload of passive damage during that time. Of course, the reason why I specified without moving is that the more your character moves around, or just mashes in general, the shorter the flower stays on their head. It can be drastically reduced by doing this. So be sure to keep up a good exercise routine if you ever get your brain taken over by a flower parasite. The Star Rod shoots out a projectile when you use a forward tilt or smash attack. Oddly enough, unlike other projectiles whose size changes alongside their user, the projectile from the Star Rod will keep its size the same. The item has a limit of 16 stars that can be shot, with any attack that does so, and after that point, stars will no longer spawn, but you can still use it as a basic battering item. Which is kind of funny, as if you use it up close, the projectile that shoots out collides with the opponent, but for some reason just doesn't deal damage, meaning a forward smash with or without the projectile is essentially the same. You need to be farther away and spaced really well if you want to hit the battering part and the projectile at the same time. Though if you just want to throw the item, there's two potential outcomes. It either hits the star part of the item, or the handle, differentiated by their sound effect. The damage output and knockback are mostly similar, but the star hit is overall stronger, and it launches the opponent at a really nasty semi-spike angle, which can be actually really useful for edgeguarding. Also, bonus fact, while most characters do a little shaking when they charge up a smash attack with the item, or really just in general, when specifically Zero Suit Samus holds specifically the Star Rod, she does not shake. It's one of those ultra niche bits of trivia that's just really funny to me. The Ore Club is a really powerful battering item that shoots out a projectile when you specifically use your forward smash, getting stronger and bigger the longer you charge. A pretty insane property of the item is that, for these forward smashes, you're given some really powerful super armor during it. You need to charge it just a little bit for the armor to come in, as doing just a forward smash alone doesn't give it to you for some reason. But what's crazy about this super armor is how long it lasts. It basically lasts until your next actionable frame, meaning you can shield after tanking hits from a multi-jab during the armor. It's super busted. What's also busted is how the item handles being dropped. On a normal surface, you can see it topple around before inevitably going upright. However, if you drop it on sloped surfaces, there's a chance it'll land upside down. Given how strongly the item looks like it's trying to not do this usually, I have to imagine this is a bug of some sort, but just a really, really funny one. Though it's not actually exclusive to the Ore Club. It seems to be able to happen for a lot of battering items, perhaps just items in general. It's pretty finicky, so I wasn't able to get it to happen for everything I tested, but it might just be super precise for some other items and I just didn't get it. Though for some like the lipstick, it lands upside down basically every time, which is especially goofy. This is one of those really simple fun ones that I think basically anyone can do. The hammer is a deadly weapon that can deal some pretty massive damage and knockback, but at a few expenses. For one, there's a chance for the hammer's head to fall off, rendering you useless. The wiki says it's a 1 out of 8 chance, at least for melee, but it felt considerably less common than that in my actual tests. But okay, I'll be real, I'm kinda sick of using items 1,000 times just to get my own data. So I'm just gonna go off of vibes and say 3.8932% chance. Nice. Anyways, for this failed version, the head can be used as a projectile, which is also strong, but whether you got the useless variant or you're just up against someone who knows what they're doing, having the hammer can sometimes be really dangerous for the user. After all, you lose access to all of your moves, including your defense options and your double jump. You only have just one jump to use. It's especially scary when facing someone with a counter or any good projectile, as if you get sent off stage, you've essentially lost your stock. Luckily, all you need to do in these scenarios is mash air dodge. If you do so, you'll actually be able to drop the hammer. Normally, you can't drop it without putting in your 2 weeks first, but if you take enough knockback from an attack, it opens up a window that lets you get rid of it, which can really save your life. As they say, sometimes the greatest option is to just let go. When talking about the golden hammer, it's mandatory that I remind the viewer that you can hover while using it if you mash the jump button. It gives you more mobility than the normal hammer does, but you know, it still comes with its downsides. For its rare backfire variant, we get the squeaky hammer. Visually nothing changes, at least as far as I can see, but now when you land the attack, it just makes a squeaking noise instead. Some funny things about this backfire is that it's still technically an attack. It can be shielded, which doesn't seem to actually hurt the shield, but leaves behind the particle of something attacking the shield anyways, and it can also be countered, which has that counter use its base minimum attack power. And regarding its song, while it normally lasts around 8 seconds or so, just like the Superstar, we can make it repeat for way longer by just changing the in-game speed, where it's now forced to stick around to match the item's extended stay time. Unlike the Superstar though, this song doesn't just repeat a lot, but rather goes through the whole piece, and even then it never reaches the end of the song, even after playing for over 30 seconds. We can't use the timer slowdown to extend the item's duration, and picking up another golden hammer just resets the song rather than prolonging it. And no, again, the frame by frame mode doesn't work as the song only progresses with the item itself. For your information, this doesn't necessarily mean the song is considered a sound effect, as you can only hear it when the in-game music is on. Before I move on, I wanted to talk about the hammer animations, which covers both hammer types, so I guess I'll just do... Some standout animations are King Dedede's dual hammer onslaught. It would have been really funny if they made this stronger somehow or have like extra hitboxes, but I don't know, the aura is enough of a buff anyways. Then there's Wario's janky sideways swing, which looks really strange when you try to turn around with it as well, but I think this quirk matches the vibe of Wario pretty well. Then there's Pit's stiff wrist swings that really give off a classic NES vibe. Now this isn't really specific to Pit, but some characters have their walk animation static regardless of the speed that they're walking at, which means if you walk really slow, you can have something like this. I swear, every single time I see this, I just can't stop but laughing, it's just so goofy. Also, Mewtwo uses its telekinesis to orbit the hammer around itself. Not only does this look cool, but it actually affects the hitbox of the hammer, I'm pretty sure. While most characters swing it in an arc over their heads, which have more well-rounded coverage, Mewtwo has a notable blind spot above and facing it. I'm not sure how much of a factor this actually plays in practice, but it's really interesting. Anyways, if you ever want your character to look really dumb and goofy, just pick up the golden hammer and play the game at 1.5 times speed. It'll always look ridiculous. I love it. The Home Run Bat is a staple item from the series for being over-the-top powerful. And while we'll get into the exact power in a moment, let's talk about the notorious forward smash's speed. In past games, the startup speed varied from character to character, but in modern titles it's homogenized to 51 frames of startup. Usually that's its drawback, right? Long wind-up time for a super powerful hit, meaning you can just avoid the hit if you see the wind-up, easy peasy. But there's some stuff going on under the surface with this item. For one, the forward smash actually serves as a reflector, and it's a pretty powerful one at that. If this is your first time learning this, you might think that I had some really good timing here to get this reflector hit in, but that's where the secret sauce comes out. This reflector hit of the smash attack happens automatically when confronted with a projectile, regardless of your timing. And it's fast, like super fast. The reflector detection thing starts at frame 2. This alone is pretty ludicrous, but remember, for the reflector, you're also swinging the bat. This swing still functions like the normal forward smash swing. You know, basically an insta-KO. Meaning under certain circumstances, you can get an easy reflect on a weak projectile, and use that reflect to hit the opponent with a power swing within just a few frames, deleting them from existence. Like, I get that items aren't known for their balance or anything, but this is kinda stupid. Also, let's just quickly appreciate Rob's home run swing where he just really winds it up. I always thought that one looked cool. In regards to the swing's power, the damage output is going to be the same, but the exact amount of knockback you do is actually notably stronger when you hit with the tip of the bat. Obviously, in practical play, this is not going to matter. Most stages are not long enough to let you live a home run swing anyways. But it's actually really important to keep into consideration for home run contest, where the extra knockback really plays an important role. It's also really good to keep in mind if you ever try to do any, tomfoolery with the item, I guess. And with that, I think we are done. I hope you enjoyed today's look at even more items. It's kind of surprising I only made it through like 10 of them today, given how much stuff I feel like I've been talking about. But that's just sort of the trend with items. Like, spoiler alert, a good chunk of items in the following episodes are gonna kind of be duds. The way I'm gonna tackle them is by just talking about general miscellaneous item facts in their stead, if just talking about their origins or basic mechanics aren't enough to cut it. Because trust me, some of these items are really bland in practice. And we just happen to get a lot of really interesting ones today. Also, I guess since the last time I uploaded, the Switch 2 has a little teaser trailer. I don't have very many opinions on it one way or another until the official direct that's coming in April, but I'll likely be streaming that once it happens. And actually, I've got other live stream ideas for future videos in mind as well, so keep an eye out for that. I think they could be really fun. I've got a lot going on, especially at nights on weekends, but I can probably squeeze in streams at the earlier parts of the day or nights on the weekdays, or the days on the weeknights, or the ways on the week way. But yeah, thanks for watching. And I'd like to thank my patrons Rain, Sil700, Burbo, and everyone else for their massive support. Stay casual, and I'll see y'all later.